The Fox News studio plunged into an eerie silence. For the first time in over 2 decades of dominating television, Tucker Carlson, the man known for his icy confidence and relentless questioning, sat frozen, mouth slightly open, eyes locked across the table at his guest, Jonathan Roumie. Even co-host Ainsley Earhart looked stunned. The warm, polished smile she wore like armor had vanished. Something had just happened, something seismic, and it only took one sentence. Just a single, precise line from Roumie, an actor turned advocate, best known for portraying Jesus but now speaking as a man of conscience, that unraveled at Carlson's entire narrative and left him scrambling for words on his own turf. The internet would detonate within minutes. Tucker Carlson, silenced, would become the headline heard across the globe. But this wasn't just another viral clip. This was the moment an unlikely guest, a man of peace and preparation, dismantled one of Fox News' sharpest swordsmen, and did it live. Before we unpack this incredible moment, the voiceover urges, hit that like button and subscribe. You're going to want to witness every second of what comes next, because the battle that was about to unfold would change everything. Carlson believed he was setting a trap. Instead, he was walking into one, crafted with humility and layered with insight. And what made it even more poetic? This wasn't Jonathan Roumie's first encounter with confrontation. Just weeks earlier, he'd stunned audiences during a national town hall, fielding questions with the quiet sharpness of a monk trained in political Aikido. He had mastered the art of remaining still while shaking the world with his words. Fox executives should have known better. They should have studied him, his background, his interviews, his calm ability to hold moral ground under pressure. But Tucker, famous for his prep, obsessed with exploiting his guests' weaknesses, completely misread the man before him. He saw an actor, a faith-based figure, a do-gooder from California. He assumed softness. He assumed naivety. He didn't see the man who had spent a lifetime embodying truth in hostile rooms, facing skepticism not with anger, but with grace sharpened into resolve. To understand why this moment would break the internet, you have to understand the players. Tucker Carlson isn't just any anchor. He's conservative media royalty, the prince of primetime. With millions of nightly viewers, he's been the gatekeeper of ideological purity, the voice who skewers Democrats and watches them stumble under pressure. His questions are quick, sharp, and rarely answered without blood. So when Carlson invited Roumie, an actor, not a politician, he believed he was playing a familiar game. Bring in someone outside the political arena, hit hard, watch them fold. He'd done it for years. Why would this be different? What Carlson didn't know was that Roumie had been preparing, not for fame, not for popularity, but for moments exactly like this one. Behind the scenes, Fox producers had actually tried to dissuade Carlson from booking Roumie. They'd seen how he handled pressure in interviews, how he stayed calm, how he turned confrontation into connection. He's not like the usual guests, one warned, but Tucker waved them off. He's just an actor. I've been doing this for 20 years. I can handle him. Those would become the last famous words of a man about to be outmatched. The show's researchers had compiled a thick binder on Roumie, his interviews, his beliefs, his quirks. But Carlson barely skimmed it. He preferred his instincts. Hit fast, hit first, and dominate the tempo. It had worked 1,000 times, but not tonight. Roumie had watched hours of Carlson's footage, mapped his rhetorical tactics, and prepared not to fight, but to disarm. Not to dominate, but to deflect and dismantle with truth and stillness. He wasn't a politician. He was something rarer. A man who meant every word he spoke. And now he was sitting in the lion's den. The studio lights dimmed. The theme music blared. Carlson opened the segment with his trademark smirk. Joining us tonight is actor and advocate Jonathan Roumie. Jonathan, welcome. Thank you, Tucker. Grateful to be here, Roumie replied calmly, sliding into his seat with the grace of a guest, not a combatant. His voice was even, his posture firm. It should have been Carlson's first warning, but the ambush began anyway. Let's talk about the border crisis, Carlson snapped. America is being flooded with illegal immigrants. Fentanyl is pouring in, and yet you and people like you continue to oppose every common-sense security measure. How do you justify that to grieving families? It was vintage Carlson, loaded, fast, weaponized. A compound accusation designed to trap. Roumie didn't flinch. Tucker, he said softly, I think you're framing this with fear, not facts. Security matters, but compassion and wisdom are not weakness. What we oppose are political stunts that harm the vulnerable and solve nothing. Carlson's eyes lit up. He thought he'd found his opening. Stunts? You're calling border security a stunt? Roumie met his gaze, steady and clear. I'm calling it a stunt when human beings are bussed across states like packages, without coordination, without care. I'm calling it a stunt when we build walls where understanding is needed. Real security comes with real solutions, not theatrics. The studio went quiet. Carlson blinked. This wasn't the script. Roumie hadn't just survived the opening attack. He'd flipped it. Calmly, factually, and with a moral tone that cut deeper than aggression ever could. And this was only the beginning. Roumie didn't raise his voice. He didn't flinch. Instead, with the grace of a seasoned advocate, he leaned into the challenge. I'm calling it a stunt, he said smoothly, when we build walls in places where they serve no real purpose. Real border security, true protection, requires comprehensive reform. But that's exactly what your side has blocked for years. The studio audience sat stone still, watching the exchange unfold like a match of intellectual chess. Carlson was accustomed to guests stammering under his attacks, succumbing to the heat of his interruptions. But Roumie matched him, point for point, word for word, calm for chaos. Sensing the tide was turning, Carlson pivoted sharply, his favorite tactic when logic failed: make it personal. Mr. Roumie, you're not a lawmaker. You've never worked on border policy. You're an actor, for heaven's sake. Don't you think it's a bit presumptuous to lecture Americans on immigration? A direct hit, at least that's what Carlson thought. The camera zoomed in on Roumie's face. He smiled. Tucker, I've spent years in communities devastated by the brokenness of our immigration system. I've sat with families separated by fear. I've spoken with mothers waiting in church basements, hoping not to be deported. I've seen the human cost. That's not inexperience. That's something you don't get sitting behind a studio desk. Carlson's face tightened. The smirk faltered. Guests weren't supposed to turn his attacks into credibility. Ainsley Earhart shifted awkwardly beside him, sensing something had gone off script. So Tucker escalated. His voice sharpened. His strategy now: disorient, interrupt, dominate. As Roumie began explaining his perspective on reform, Carlson cut in. But Jonathan? I wasn't finished, Tucker, Roumie said gently, his voice unwavering. You invited me here to speak. Let me speak. I just need to ask, and I will answer. But respect means listening too. The audience leaned in. This wasn't how Fox News interviews went. This wasn't how Carlson interviews went. The American people deserve answers, Carlson barked, trying to reclaim ground. And I'm trying to give them. If you'll stop interrupting, Roumie replied with a calm smile that cut deeper than any shout ever could. Earhart looked back and forth between them, visibly unsettled. The interview was spiraling out of Carlson's control, and everyone in the room knew it. Carlson shifted again. The numbers, his go-to move. Rattle off stats so fast they overwhelm. Let me give you facts, he said. Border encounters are up 300%. Fentanyl deaths are exploding. Drug seizures at record highs. These aren't opinions, these are facts. How do you answer that? Roumie didn't blink, didn't stall. Tucker, he said evenly, those numbers need context, not panic. Asylum seekers are included in border encounters, and seeking asylum is a legal right under international law. Fentanyl, tragic as it is, enters mostly through legal ports, not open fields. And if seizures are at record highs, maybe that means our agents are doing their job, not that we're being overrun. Carlson blinked. The attack had not only failed, it had been reversed. Now the audience was silent, tense, watching. The lion had roared, but the lamb stood still. Carlson's frustration was visible now. His rhythm, the tempo he always controlled, was slipping. He had one move left: go for the jugular. Let's be honest here, Carlson said, voice edged with disdain. You're an out-of-touch Hollywood figure pushing radical ideas. You represent everything that's wrong with the new left, naive, extreme, and obsessed with virtue signaling instead of real solutions. How do you respond to that? The air froze. This was Carlson at his harshest, the kind of personal attack that had humbled governors, senators, even generals. The camera zoomed in. Carlson, staring with smug challenge. Roumie, serene, hands folded, a pause. Then Roumie leaned forward, his voice low but electric. Tucker, for someone who spent the last 4 years defending a president who tried to overturn a democratic election, I'm not sure you're in a position to lecture anyone on what's extreme. The silence hit like a detonation. Carlson's face drained. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came. The control room exploded into chaos. Directors shouting, producers gesturing wildly into headsets. No one knew what to do. Carlson was silent. One camera operator would later recall, "I've been in live TV 15 years. I've never seen Tucker break." That night, he broke. Earhart's eyes widened. She looked between them, stunned. Even the newsroom behind the glass froze. Carlson sat, completely still. It lasted 5 seconds, maybe less. But to those watching, it was an eternity. And everyone knew the moment had changed everything. Tucker Carlson's entire worldview, one built on dominance, interruption, and keeping guests off balance, shattered in real time. And it took just one perfectly crafted sentence. When he finally found his voice, it trembled. We're not talking about the former president here. We're talking about extremism. Jonathan Roumie didn't miss a beat. "Then let's talk about it honestly," he said, his voice still steady. "What's more extreme, Tucker? Advocating for working families or defending a president who incited an insurrection against his own country?" Carlson's face reddened. He was completely off script now, visibly reeling. "That's not what this interview is about," he muttered, clinging to the last shreds of his authority. "Then maybe," Roumie replied, gaze unblinking, "you shouldn't have brought up extremism." A soft gasp could be heard in the studio. "I'm happy to discuss policy differences," Roumie continued, each word deliberate and devastating. "But if you want to throw around words like extreme, let's be accurate about who that really describes." A murmur passed through the audience. Scattered claps began to break the silence. Tentative at first, but growing. Even some of the camera crew exchanged quick glances, suppressed smirks, as if witnessing something once thought impossible. Earhart, clearly panicking, tried to step in and save Carlson. "Well, I think what Tucker is trying to say—" "Ainsley," Roumie interrupted politely, "I think Tucker is perfectly capable of speaking for himself, unless he's not." The implication hung in the air like thunder. Carlson, so used to backing down no one, was now the one being challenged. Live, on his own stage. Sensing her opponent's unraveling, Roumie didn't gloat. He pressed forward with grace and composure, which only made the blows land harder. "Tucker, I came on this show in good faith to discuss real issues, but for the past 10 minutes, you've done everything but that. You've attacked my character. You've twisted my intentions. If this is what passes for discourse here, that says more about your network than it does about me." Carlson was flailing now. "Jonathan, I think you're mischaracterizing this exchange." "Am I?" Roumie asked quietly. "Let's review. You called me inexperienced. You called me radical. You called me out of touch. You interrupted me again and again. You questioned my qualifications. Is that what you call a respectful conversation?" The cameras didn't miss a thing. They captured every twitch, every tightening whoa, every silent second as Carlson sat, trapped by his own tactics. And Roumie, like a lawyer in a courtroom, delivered his second knockout line. "You want to talk about what's extreme, Tucker? What's extreme is having 3 million viewers a night and using that platform to spread fear and misinformation instead of truth." Carlson's face drained of color. He had built a media empire on viewership and influence, and now it was being held up like a mirror, a weapon turned inward. That's not," Carlson stammered. "That's not what?" Roumie asked, tilting his head slightly. "That's not what I do. Tucker, you paid nearly $800 million to settle a lawsuit for spreading lies about an election. How exactly is that not extreme?" The contrast was staggering. Carlson, flushed, rattled, running his hand through his disheveled hair, looked like he was barely holding it together. Roumie, calm, grounded, serene. He could have been speaking at a Sunday mass, not a cable news ambush. Earhart looked like she wanted to disappear. The control room was in panic. This wasn't just off script. This was a collapse. Fox News had never seen this before. A guest who didn't just survive the Carlson gauntlet, but turned it into a moral inquisition. And then came the moment no one expected. Carlson gave up. "Well, he said quietly, his voice a far cry from its usual authority. "I suppose we'll have to agree to disagree." A single sentence, a white flag. The man who never backed down, who always had the last word, conceded, and the world saw it. Roumie gave a warm, diplomatic smile. "I'm always happy to have respectful disagreement, Tucker. That's what democracy is supposed to be about." The interview limped along for a few more minutes. Softball questions, pre-written closing notes, but the real show was over. Everyone knew it. When the cameras cut to commercial, they caught a final frame. Roumie, calm and collected, adjusting his sleeve like a man leaving a peaceful debate. Earhart, wide-eyed and speechless. And Carlson staring blankly at his notes, as if trying to rewrite what had just happened. But there would be no rewriting this. The aftermath. Even before the credits rolled, the internet was in flames. The Fox News production team, despite wanting to bury the segment, couldn't stop the flood. The moment was everywhere. Within 30 minutes, the clip had crossed 500,000 views on Twitter. By morning, 10 million plus across all platforms. Hashtags like #Roumie silences Carlson and #mic drop moment trended worldwide. Zoomers and millennials flooded social media. This is what confidence looks like. He said what we were all thinking. POV, watching someone roast Goliath with a smile. The clip became more than viral. It became a symbol, a recruitment poster for political courage, a proof of concept that you could speak softly and still shake the halls of power. International media picked it up. The BBC dissected it. German newspapers debated it. British comedians made sketches of it. Even Tucker Carlson's own colleagues were speechless. A Fox insider whispered to Politico, "He just broke." You could see it. We all saw it. He brought a sword to a prayer meeting and lost. Media experts scrambled to dissect exactly what made Jonathan Roumie's response so decisive. Communication professors across the nation started using the interview in their classes as a perfect example of rhetorical jujitsu, turning an opponent's force against them. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a professor of political communication at Georgetown University, couldn't have been clearer. Roumie did something brilliant. Instead of defending himself against Carlson's attack, he completely reframed the conversation. He made it about Carlson's credibility, not his own. That's what I call advanced-level political communication. Political analysts from every corner of the spectrum weighed in. One even tweeted, "I'm no fan of Roumie's politics, but the way he handled Carlson was a masterclass in media confrontation." Carlson looked utterly lost, his usual sharpness now replaced by a nervous edge. A conservative voice tweeted, "Regardless of party, you have to respect how Roumie dismantled Carlson." That was something special. Carlson, the man who had dominated debates for over 2 decades, had just walked into a buzzsaw of his own making. The most viral tweet of the night came from MediaWatch. "In 22 years of hosting, has Tucker Carlson ever been left speechless like this?" Jonathan Roumie just made television history. Internet culture reacted with its usual speed. Within hours, memes flooded every social platform, and the image of Carlson's speechless face became the internet's latest reaction shot. When someone actually answers your loaded question, POV, you just watched a live TV murder. TikTok creators had a field day, remixing the moment with energetic captions and spinning it into countless viral versions. The stark contrast between Roumie's calm confidence and Carlson's rattled demeanor became the template for countless memes. Even CNN's Anderson Cooper opened his show the following night with a nod to the historic moment. We've all had tough interviews, but what happened to Tucker Carlson last night is exactly why preparation matters. MSNBC's Rachel Maddow dedicated an entire segment to the interview, calling it a masterclass in staying calm under pressure and turning aggressive questioning right back on the questioner. Even some Fox News personalities privately admitted it. One Fox insider told Politico, "We've never seen anything like this before. Carlson outmatched for the first time in his career." Democrats celebrated like they had won the Super Bowl. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries tweeted, "This is what happens when you send a brilliant attorney to do an interview." Even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez couldn't resist. "Taking notes for my next Fox News appearance. Roumie's performance was next level." But even Republicans couldn't ignore the magnitude of Roumie's victory. Senator Susan Collins, known for her moderate views, admitted, "I disagree with Roumie on most issues, but I have to respect how he handled himself under extreme pressure." Conservative media's response varied sharply. Some tried to downplay the moment, with the Daily Wire publishing an article titled, "Why One Interview Doesn't Matter." But the defensive tone of the piece only underscored how big the moment had been. Others, like Ben Shapiro, took a different route. Facts don't care about your feelings, and Roumie came armed with facts. Carlson should have been better prepared, but the damage had been done. Even Rush Limbaugh's replacement on conservative talk radio spent an entire segment trying to explain why Carlson's performance wasn't as bad as it appeared. The effort only highlighted how bad it actually was. Behind the scenes at Fox News, the reaction was chaotic. Fox executives were furious. Carlson, who prided himself on his preparation and control, had been caught off guard. Emergency meetings were held. Some wanted to bury the footage, hoping it would disappear. Others suggested that Carlson address the incident directly on his next show. In the end, they chose the middle ground. Carlson made a brief, half-hearted comment about his spirited discussions with guests, but never directly acknowledged what had happened. The decision to ignore the moment only fueled the narrative that Roumie had won. The aftershock political strategists on both sides quickly realized that Jonathan Roumie had created a new template for how Democrats could handle hostile Fox News interviews. Instead of caving under pressure, getting defensive, or avoiding tough questions, Roumie had stayed calm, stuck to facts, and turned the aggression back on his interviewer. Democratic media trainers began showing the clip as the gold standard for handling hostile interviews. "This is how you deal with aggressive media," became the refrain. The impact on Roumie's career was immediate. His Twitter following tripled overnight. Speaking requests flooded in from across the country. Democratic fundraising emails started featuring his name right alongside AOC and Elizabeth Warren. Roumie had proven one thing: he could take on conservative media and win. This was no small feat in the polarized political landscape. Nancy Pelosi herself called him the day after the interview. "Jonathan, that was exactly what we needed. You showed we don't have to be afraid of these people." And Roumie's interview wasn't just about him. It was a turning point for the entire political media game. It showed that young politicians, those who'd grown up with social media and were comfortable with confrontation, weren't going to be intimidated by the traditional media gatekeepers anymore. They knew that viral moments could be more powerful than traditional interview victory. The end of an era? The interview marked the end of an era for Fox News' once unshakable interview tactics. If one well-prepared guest could completely dismantle one of the most experienced hosts on the network, what did that say about the quality of their other guests and the substance of their typical interviews? Roumie had set a new bar for political communication. The old rules were changing. In the weeks following the interview, speculation swirled across the political landscape. Would Jonathan Roumie run for higher office? Would he become a regular fixture on political talk shows? Would his masterful handling of Carlson's assault inspire other Democrats to follow suit? Meanwhile, Fox News found itself under increasing scrutiny. The network that had built its brand on dominating guests with aggressive questioning was now confronted with a new breed of politician, one who refused to be bullied. What happens when the guests fight back with facts, composure, and unshakable confidence? Carlson, once untouchable, appeared to realize that he needed to adapt. His subsequent interviews showed a noticeable shift, more measured, more cautious, as if he was now playing defense, a far cry from his usual aggressive approach. The Crockett effect had taken hold, but beyond the network's internal changes, the interview raised broader questions about the role of media in democracy. Should interviewers be aggressive advocates for their viewpoints, or should they take on the role of neutral facilitators of discourse? Roumie's performance demonstrated that politicians armed with facts and able to maintain their composure could turn the most hostile interviews into moments of victory. And yet, the interview also highlighted how rarely that happens, raising the uncomfortable question of why so many politicians still fail to prepare for these types of encounters. The interview quickly became required viewing in journalism schools, political communication classes, and among aspiring public figures. Roumie had shifted the power dynamics in media interviews forever. Guests no longer had to passively accept their roles as targets. They could reclaim the narrative and force the host to respond to their questions. 6 months after the interview, its impact was still being felt. Roumie had cemented himself as one of the most sought-after voices in Democratic media. Carlson, now noticeably more reserved, had scaled back his most aggressive tactics. Fox News began screening its guests more carefully, knowing that the old strategy of booking easy targets could backfire spectacularly. The phrase "pulling a Roumie" quickly entered the political lexicon, meaning to turn an opponent's attack back on them with devastating effectiveness. Democratic politicians, inspired by his performance, began preparing for hostile interviews by studying Roumie's techniques. Most importantly, the interview demonstrated the power of preparation in the age of social media. A single well-executed moment could not only shift the course of an interview, it could change careers, shift political narratives, and redefine public discourse in ways that traditional political strategies never could. The story of Jonathan Roumie shutting down Tucker Carlson with a single sentence wasn't just about a brilliant politician winning a single televised moment. It was about the power of preparation, staying calm under pressure, and having the courage to fight back against bullies. In a political environment where many Democrats had feared confronting conservative media directly, Roumie showed that it was possible not just to survive these encounters, but to win them decisively. His performance became a masterclass in political communication, a beacon for young politicians, and a powerful symbol of a changing era in media and democracy. The interview remains one of the most watched political clips in internet history, a testament to the fact that sometimes the right words at the right moment can change everything. What do you think? Did Jonathan Roumie completely destroy Tucker Carlson? Or was there more to the story? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because you won't want to miss the next incredible political moment. In modern politics, preparation beats intimidation every time. Roumie didn't just get lucky, he outworked, outsmarted, and outmaneuvered one of television's most experienced hosts. His performance will be studied for years to come as a masterclass in political communication, a reminder that sometimes the right sentence at the right moment can change the entire game. Share this story with anyone who needs to see what real political courage looks like. And remember to stay tuned for more incredible moments like this one. And there you have it. What an incredible moment in political media. Jonathan Roumie's performance will go down in history as a defining moment for Democratic media strategy. But this story doesn't stop here. There's always more to explore, more lessons to learn, and more jaw-dropping moments waiting to unfold. If you want to stay up to date with the latest political stories, breakdowns, and interviews, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss the next big moment. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.